Hi guys, it's Anthony. Back with another video where I talk about different aspects of recovery from narcissistic abuse. I made a video before, my first video, but the sound quality was really terrible. So I do apologize for those of you who weren't able to listen to it properly. I had some good things to say, I think, or some useful things to say, but probably a lot of people gave up because you really had to struggle to hear me. So I might actually do another video with the same sort of content, but today I'm going to talk about something a bit different, something that I haven't actually come across very much online, whether on YouTube or on different blogs that I've been reading about narcissistic abuse, and that's the topic of homophobia and narcissistic abuse and how the two often go hand in hand. Sorry, this light is really bright, so it looks a bit weird. Hopefully that's better. Yeah, so that's a topic that doesn't really, the two don't often get put in the same kind of sentence, but actually they do often coincide. And I can talk about it from my own experience. As I said in my previous video, I am not a professional. I'm actually a film historian and a writer, so I'm not a psychologist or any kind of mental health professional. So anything that I'm sharing with you is just my personal experience, things that I either experienced or maybe read or heard other people talk about. So as someone who has been dealing with this for a very long time and who has only relatively recently awoken to the truth of it and to sort of really started to get to grips with what has happened to me, I just think it's very important to put it out there and share it with other people, and hopefully other people can, we can all learn from each other, and that's why it's all part of this healing journey that we're all sharing. And the topic of homophobia and narcissistic abuse is a complex one, because obviously either one of these things on their own are really, really difficult to deal with, but when combined together, it's a really, really lethal combination and something that's really difficult to grasp, especially if you're a child of a narcissistic parent and you've never really known anything else. So if you were brought up in a toxic home or by sort of narcissistic parents or one parent, that's why it's so difficult to really get out of it and to change the way you think and change the way you see yourself, because from a very, very early age you have been programmed to think a certain way, to look at yourself in a certain way, and to respond to others in a certain way. And it was deliberate, you were being used to become your narcissistic parents' main source of narcissistic supply. So they have programmed you, they have kind of, they have invested a lot of time and energy to make sure that you remain that, when you grow up. And obviously we don't, we grow up and we slowly start realizing things, and we want to have our own life, and we want to break free from those constraints and from the cycle of abuse, and then all hell breaks loose, even more so than, and then we start realizing that throughout our childhood things weren't good, and that, some of us know this throughout our childhood. We know that something's wrong. We know that we're very uncomfortable, but for many of us, we are sort of sleepwalking through our childhood. We know that something's wrong. We know that we don't, but we can't really put our finger on it. We don't really know whether, and we think it's us. There's something wrong with us. We are the problem. We don't necessarily associate it with the way we are being brought up, because obviously we don't know anything else. And as a child, you don't really question your parents' parenting methods or their behavior very often, because it's just not how our brain works. When we're children, we are 100% trusting that our parents are doing what they're supposed to do, because that's how we're programmed, that's how we think, that's how we feel. So we are trusting, we trust our parents to show us, you know, their love and to teach us the best they can. And so it's very difficult for a child to realize that their parent is a narcissist. I mean, we don't think like that as children. We don't know what it means. And when homophobia comes into it, it's your sexuality. It becomes even more complicated and more difficult to deal with. And what happens is your parents will, or your narcissistic parent, your toxic parent, whether it's your mother or your father, or sometimes it's both, but I find that usually one of your parents is toxic or is narcissistic anyway, and the other parent may be an enabler or in some way is part of the equation. Obviously, if your parents are still together, chances are that the parent who is not narcissistic is enabling the narcissistic parent. And so that becomes very difficult, and the whole family dynamic. I talk about this a little bit in my previous video, again, which if you want to go back and listen to, make sure you have your headphones with you. But I talk a little bit about growing up in a narcissistic, toxic household. But if your sexuality becomes a weapon to your parent, to your toxic parent, that's a really, really awful situation to be in, because chances are you are already very confused growing up. We all are. I mean, regardless of our sexuality, we are confused because it's all new to us. And when we enter our teens and we start thinking about these things, and we start thinking about sex, and we start thinking about our own bodies in a different way, we start thinking about relationships in a different way, all of those things, and it is very, very confusing. Growing up is confusing at, you know, best of times. And if you grow up in a house where you can't really talk about it, or your parents pretend it's not a subject, or you feel from the start that you're rejected in some way, because you know, even though you haven't come out to your parents, you know that homosexuality is something that would not necessarily go down well with your parents, and you feel it, you know it, either because of things that have been said, or you can just sense it in their attitude, and you know that coming out maybe doesn't even enter your mind because you're so scared and so confused about it that you don't admit it to yourself even properly. So your parents or your I keep saying your parents because, as I said, it's usually a weird kind of teamwork, if you can say that. But personally, in my case, my father died when I was quite young, so he kind of died at the threshold of my teenage years. I was 12, so exactly at the very beginning of my journey. So I was left with my mom, who, as it turns out, is a narcissist. And so my teenage years were very, very, very difficult. My sexuality was something that I was aware of very early on, actually. I speak to a lot of people, a lot of other gay people or LGBTQ people in general, and it really varies. Your level of awareness really varies depending on who you are, and some people take a very long time to realize that they're gay or queer in any way, and it takes them a while to really realize that. And for others, it's kind of always there. And I'm one of these people who, even when I was sort of 4 and 5, I remember very clearly having this a gay identity. You know, obviously you don't think about sex when you're 5 or 4, or anyway, you don't think about it in the same way that you do later on. But you are aware, and you know, you do have an identity. And so yes, I knew about it, and I knew that I couldn't come out with it. I knew it was something, and I don't know how I knew this, but I knew that it was something that I couldn't discuss with my mother. Now, there are different reasons and there are different ways in which your narcissistic parent will use your sexuality against you. And a lot of the times it's bound up with religion, of course. That's a big, big thing and a big tool that they can use. And then another form of abuse comes into it, which is spiritual abuse, which is a huge sort of, it's a very popular form of abuse in cults, in different religious environments, because it's very easy to manipulate someone using religion, using their belief system. And if you were brought up in a certain religion, so that's all you've ever known, maybe you grew up going to church or Sunday school or any other sort of religious facility. And, you know, chances are with most religions, most of the big religions, homosexuality is not necessarily, you know, looked upon favorably. So if that's the kind of religious environment you were brought up in, you develop this incredibly strong sense of shame, and you definitely don't want to come out. You suppress it, you think it's wrong, you think you are a bad person, you try to hide it, you try to change it, you pray for it to go away, whatever. There are so many, you know, you go through this very, very painful journey which lasts, you know, throughout your teenage years and into your 20s, and, you know, for some people it goes on for many years. What your narcissistic parent will do is they will, in a way, because you are queer or you're LGBT or, you know, you're gay or whatever you may identify as, they will see this as a very easy way to guilt trip you, to shame you, to manipulate you, to try to make you remain sort of in some way faithful to them. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's how they think. You know, your narcissistic parent does not think about your happiness. They don't even consider it. They don't consider that you have needs, that you have a life of your own, that you are your own person, that you deserve to have a life, that you deserve to be happy, that you deserve to have relationships, that you deserve to have friendships, all of that. It really doesn't even enter their mind. Obviously, if you are heterosexual, it's more difficult because it's a given that you will kind of, you know, get married and have children, especially if you are brought up in a religious environment. That's kind of encouraged. So it's difficult for your narcissistic parent, to discourage that. They still will. And one of the things they will do is they will, you know, veto every partner that you have or every boyfriend or girlfriend that you have when you're a teenager, because they will never be good enough for you, or they will only be with you for the wrong reasons. And you will hear this a lot, and there will be a lot of warnings, you know, don't go out with anyone because you're too young. And no matter how young, you know, you might be 17, 18, 19, it will never be the right time, and it will never be the right person. However, if you're queer or gay, or, you know, that will be even easier for them. They may say, you know, you shouldn't be with anyone because it's a sin, so, you know, don't even think about it. And if if they find out you're gay, if you come out to them, or if you're outed by someone else, they will consistently, persistently, continuously use this against you. and it will be so easy for them, and they will love it. They will love guilt tripping it. They will love saying, you're committing a sin, you're living in sin, you're offending God, you're being a bad person, you are turning your hat, you're turning your back on your religion. You will hear this constantly. And you will probably, find that sometimes you may have not even grown up very religious, or your parents maybe weren't even religious. Maybe they didn't even go to church. And then suddenly, as soon as you start, when you grow up and you start trying to be independent, and it turns out that you're also gay or LGBT in any way, suddenly they will become very religious, and they will kind of become born again, or they will suddenly remember that they come from an Irish family or an Italian family or a Polish family, and suddenly this whole Catholic guilt will become a huge thing, and you will become very confused because you think, wait a second, we didn't really go to church like as a family or anything when I was growing up. It wasn't such a big deal in our house, and suddenly it is, and it will. Your narcissistic parent might become the most devout Christian there is, and they will start guilt tripping you, and they will start saying, look at me, I found God, I found the light, and look at you, you're a sinner, you're lost, you need to find yourself, you need to stop living your life, and essentially become closer to me again, so that I can heal you. And it's very, very damaging. It's very, very difficult to find your way out of it. And just to say, I'm not advocating again or hating on religion or anything like that. I grew up in a semi-Catholic kind of family, but my parents were not religious when I was growing up. We never went to church as a family. We didn't pray at home. There was no, religion was not part of my upbringing, other than at school. I went to a Catholic school, and, both my grandmothers were very religious, but my parents weren't at all. And my mother became increasingly more and more religious as I grew older, and then when I came out, and when I met my partner, and when I started living openly as a gay man, she became more and more religious, and she kept using religion as a tool to abuse me, basically. And this is a very, very important point to make. Religion is never an excuse for abuse. You can, no matter how religious you are, no matter what religion you follow, it's never all right to abuse your children, to manipulate your children, to try to force your children to be a certain way, or to believe something that they may not believe, or to follow the path that you are following. It's never okay to be abusive in any way, and that's spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, any form of abuse. It is never all right. It is never justified. And that's something that may seem quite simple and self-explanatory, but it's not. It took me a very long time to realize that what was happening was abuse. Trying to force your child, or manipulating your child, or guilt tripping your child, or basically, yes, trying to force your child into believing something, or thinking the way, or seeing things the way you see them. That's abuse, and it's not all right. And it's interesting because, there are actually very religious people who have children who are gay, and they may not always agree with their choices. They may not personally, they may not think this is, they wouldn't do it, or they would try not to do it if they were in their children's shoes. but that never stops them from loving their child, from supporting their child emotionally, whatever, in whatever way they need support, and loving them and respecting them, respecting their choices, respecting their partners, whoever they may be. And yes, it's all right to talk about religion, to shine by example, and try to you can even sort of advocate your religion in a non-abusive way. You can talk to people about your religion. You can, especially if they want to, if they invite that. And obviously it's all right for your parents to talk to you about, if they want to, about religion, about why they think you should follow a certain path. It's all right. Obviously, conversation is always welcome, and it's not the same as abuse. But it's never all right to abuse your children, or anyone for that matter. So it's very important to realize that. And it sometimes can be quite difficult to tell the difference between, is my parent really being homophobic or narcissistic, or are they just trying to, because you'll ask yourself this question: are my parents just do they just want what's best for me? Maybe I am wrong, and you will constantly question yourself. And the whole point is, okay, even in the grander scheme of things, maybe we are wrong. It doesn't matter. We don't know who's right and who's wrong at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. Even if you are religious, it's up to God to, judge you. It's not up to your parents or your priest or your teacher or anyone to judge you, to judge your life, to tell you how to live your life. So whether your parents agree with your choices, whether your parents agree with, not even your choices, because it's not really your choice, but whether your parents accept who you are, it's never an excuse to abuse someone because of who they are. And as I said again, I will say it again and again, because I can't repeat it enough. You are who you are. You deserve love and respect, and especially from your parents, who are meant to give you unconditional love. Whatever happens, they are meant to be there for you, support you, love you. And they're not there to use you, to abuse you, to manipulate you, to shame you, to guilt trip you. It's never all right. So that's really the point I wanted to make. And your parents will probably, or your narcissistic parent or toxic parent will try to guilt trip you into following their religion or following their path or listening to them unconditionally. And do not be fooled. It's not for your own good. It's not that they really believe that you're sinning or you're a sinner and you will go to hell, and it's out of concern that they're trying so hard to lead you off your path. It's not concern. It's simply because they think if they can possess your soul, in effect, if they can really manipulate you on such a grand scale, then they will essentially own you. Because if they can dictate your beliefs, if they can dictate how you live your life, if they can convince you to abandon who you are and to abandon your identity, your sexuality, that means that they have won. That means that you will forever be a source of supply for them, that you will not live your life, that you will not be an independent person, that you will not be living your own life. You won't be in charge of your own life. You would have given your life and your identity and your freedom to your narcissistic parent. So that's why it's so important, and that's why they will fight so hard to win this battle. So they will use any kind of ammunition that they can. They will use God, hell, sin, cherish your parents, and you have to look after your parents, and in everything they can. And they will do it continuously. They will send you letters, perhaps leave voicemails on your phone if that's an option for them. They will tell their neighbors about how bad you are. They will definitely tell your family members how bad you are. So they will sort of blacklist you within your family. And depending on how many kind of flying monkeys they have, you may find yourself very much alone in your family, and you may find yourself really struggling to find your ground and really be happy, because it's very difficult. On one hand, and I talk about this in my previous video, you're awakened and you find your own identity and you finally have the courage to live your life. But on the other hand, it's really hard because you lose your parents. In effect, you lose your family, or a big chunk of your family. You feel alone, and there are days where you feel really, really vulnerable and really down and really, really sad. And it will happen, and it's a very, very sad byproduct of being a child of a narcissistic parent, of a toxic home. And whether you are queer or LGBT or not, it's very sad. But if you are queer and LGBT, it's even harder, because chances are that you've already experienced abuse from other sources. You might have been bullied at school. You might have been abused in other areas of your life, because even being gay, even to this day, and I know there's a lot more acceptance, especially in certain areas of the world, not everywhere, because being gay is still punishable by death in certain places around the world. But in many countries, it's a lot more conducive than it used to be. But yes, chances are that when you were growing up, it was still very difficult, and you might have had a lot of problems at school. You might have had a lot of problems getting to grips with who you were without having to deal with your parents being toxic and narcissistic as well on top of it, and being homophobic. So if you have all of those things coming crashing upon you, it's really, really hard, and it will be a hard journey, and chances are you've already been through the worst of it, which is, if you're watching this video, it's probable that you've lived through it. So you can really be proud of it and celebrate yourself, and really do, because that's the key to recovery. That's the key to healing from all of this, is to remember that you are amazing. You are very strong. You are very, you're beautiful and unique, and you survived all of this. You said no to abuse. You said no to bullshit, and you're here to tell your tale, to tell your truth, to celebrate yourself, surround yourself with people who accept you, who love you for who you are, and just put self-care and self-love at the heart of what you do, because you really deserve that love. You deserve that self-care. You deserve all of it, and you weren't given it by your parents. You weren't given it maybe by other family members or by people around you when you were growing up. Now is the time to gift yourself with all of that, and realize that you are amazing, you are special and beautiful. And whether you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. You don't have to, it's another thing is that you may lose your faith completely, and it's sad, because you will associate religion, you will associate faith and God and church with very, very negative things. And it is very common, and I know this from other people as well, that the moment you awaken, the moment you realize what was happening to you, the moment you realize that you were abused for so long, you will you will feel this disgust with religion, with faith. You won't want to have anything to do with it. And that's fine also, that's natural, that's part of it. Of course you will feel that way. And don't feel guilty about it, don't feel bad about it. Allow yourself to feel angry, to feel all of those feelings, because they're perfectly valid and you've earned your right to feel this way. But also realize they may not be final. All those feelings you have, the anger, the disgust, is actually not towards God or religion. It's towards the abuse that you've suffered, and it's towards certain people. It may be your family, it may be even people. You might have gone to a religious school and you might have been abused by your teachers, or whatever it may be. I know this will definitely impact the way you look at religion, but it doesn't mean that you are never able to go back to it and revisit it and look at it with different eyes, with fresh eyes, with healthy eyes. Because once you have shed all of this, once you've really come to know yourself and love yourself and accept yourself, and once you've freed yourself from this baggage, you will be free to make your own decision. And that's what's beautiful about it. You may go back to the religion of your childhood and sort of take it up and really get involved in it in a healthy, beautiful way. You may discover another faith or belief system or religion that actually is much more aligned with you and that actually speaks to you and that actually will feel more like you. And that's also beautiful, and that happens a lot. Or you may feel that you don't need religion in your life and that you don't want to follow any religious path, and that's also alright. So my point is, don't feel bad about not wanting to continue your religious life in the same way that you have done previously when you were still being abused, because chances are that you were not really living within a true sort of sense of being religious. You were probably forced into it, or somehow you only did it because your parents told you to do it, or you went to church, or you went to confession. Like, don't do it if it's not something you really feel you want to do. If religion continues to be important to you and you are able to separate it from your experiences, that's wonderful. Continue doing it, continue practicing, and it's great. If not, however, do not force yourself, because it has no point. You don't want to remain stuck in those kind of systems that didn't work for you, that somehow contributed to you being abused. So make sure that whatever you do after your awakening, whether it's your religion or the friends you surround yourself with or the job you're doing or anything else, your appearance, make sure that you re-examine all of it, because chances are, and again, I mentioned this in my past video, chances are that everything up to your awakening was somehow tainted by the abuse that you suffered. So chances are that a lot of the things in your life were there for the wrong reasons. And it's really important that you take a very close, very careful look at all of those things, among them religion and your belief systems, and really think about whether this is something that's true to you, whether it's something that's really aligned with you, whether it's something that you actually believe, whether it's something that you actually like. If it is, great, keep it there. But if it's not, make sure you don't keep it there, because it will be like this, as I said in my previous video, like this radioactive element that you still keep in your house, even if you know it's there. You don't keep radioactive elements in your house. You don't subject yourself to that. If you know something is toxic, you get rid of it. You throw it away as far as possible. So it's the same with your beliefs, with your religion that you were brought up in. If it's not something that you believe in anymore, if it's not something that is aligned with you, if it's not something that feels good and healthy, do not continue in that vein. Give yourself time, and then with a fresh mind, with a fresh eye, with a fresh heart, re-examine what really is important to you, what you need in your life in order to function, to be happy, and that includes your spirituality. So I think I'm going to end this video here because it's already quite long, but please leave comments underneath if I have left something out, if you have gone through this spiritual homophobic abuse, and you have any tips or things that I might have not mentioned or I might not know about myself, please leave comments. It will really mean a lot to me, and hopefully I'll be able to do another video where I talk about other aspects of recovery from narcissistic abuse. Thank you everyone for watching, and till next time.